The stars stretched out across the endless void like ancient whispers of civilizations long past in the Galactic Empire. All was calm, the hum of hyperdrives, and the shifting of fleets across light years. The Empire was vast, and unchallenged, its dominance unquestioned. But then came the signal, a flicker at the edge of the galaxy, barely noticeable at first, a small ripple in the fabric of space. Something no one expected. Earth, a small, insignificant planet far from the seat of imperial power, was sending out a message. It was not like the usual chatter from distant colonies. No, this was different. This was a command. The signal was brief, but its meaning was undeniable, a transmission from Earth itself, as if the planet had awoken from centuries of slumber, and the message was chilling in its simplicity. The gates are closing forever. The words repeated over and over, a phrase that made no sense to anyone who heard it at first. Some thought it was a glitch, a rogue transmission from an ancient satellite left to drift in the darkness. Some suggested it was a malfunction within the Empire's own communications networks. But as more reports came in and more data was analyzed, the truth became apparent. Earth was no longer merely a backwater world isolated and forgotten by the Empire. Earth was closing its doors, and with it came an unspoken challenge to the Empire's authority. News of the signal reached the Emperor himself, and the once peaceful air of the imperial throne room shifted with sudden unease. The Emperor stood tall, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the holographic display of Earth's message. The phrase repeated over and over in the cold silence of the room. The Emperor's advisors were quick to speak, but their words carried little weight. The message was too cryptic, too sudden for them to fully grasp. They murmured in confusion. Some suggested that Earth's isolation was a result of some new technology emerging from the planet, something unknown and dangerous. Others feared that the message was a prelude to rebellion. The Emperor, however, had no doubts. Earth had always been a curiosity to him, a distant world in a forgotten corner of the galaxy that had never fully yielded to imperial influence. Despite efforts over the centuries to bring it into the fold, Earth had resisted in subtle ways. The planet's primitive inhabitants were not easy to control, and now it seemed they had found a way to shut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy. The Emperor's first instinct was to dismiss the message as irrelevant, a sign of some desperate last-ditch effort from a planet whose time had passed. But there was something about the way Earth's message was delivered that caught his attention, something about the tone, the finality of it. Earth wasn't just cutting ties, it was sealing itself off, and the implications were far greater than anyone had anticipated. An emergency council was called as imperial generals and strategists gathered to discuss the next steps. Their collective minds raced, trying to make sense of the situation. They had seen no signs of Earth's newfound power, no signals of advanced weaponry or fleets of warships, just a simple message that carried the weight of a declaration. Earth was refusing to be part of the Empire any longer, and this was no empty threat. This was a signal of something far more dangerous, a statement of defiance from a planet that had once been dismissed as insignificant. The first orders came swiftly. A fleet was to be assembled and dispatched to Earth. Immediately, the Empire would not tolerate this act of rebellion. They would crush it before it could spread, before other colonies thought to follow in Earth's footsteps. And so the Imperial fleet set course for the distant world, unaware that the gates of Earth were already closing for good. The Emperor sat at the center of his command chamber, his expression unreadable as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The signal from Earth had set in motion a chain of events that no one had foreseen. His advisors spoke in hushed tones as they pored over the data, their faces etched with confusion and concern. The signal had been received, but its meaning was still unclear. What kind of power could a planet like Earth suddenly possess to so brazenly defy the Empire? No matter how primitive its inhabitants might appear, Earth had always been a wild card, an anomaly among the stars. The Empire had long considered it a backwater world, one that barely warranted attention. But now this simple message had shaken the foundations of imperial certainty to their core. The Emperor's mind raced with possibilities as his eyes lingered on the holographic projection of Earth, a tiny speck in the vastness of space, but one that now demanded his immediate attention. The Empire's hold on the galaxy had been unchallenged for centuries, yet here was a lone planet declaring its intention to shut itself off to the universe. And if Earth was indeed capable of such a thing, what else might it have been hiding all these years? We cannot ignore this. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice cold, and commanding the room fell silent at his words. His advisors exchanged nervous glances. Send a fleet to Earth immediately. We will see if this is a bluff or something more serious. Prepare the full strength of our forces. We will not let this act of defiance go unanswered. His orders were swift and unambiguous. The wheels of imperial might were set into motion. Within hours, the fleet was being assembled on the far side of the galaxy, where the Imperial Armada waited for its command. The Empire's most powerful ships stood ready for the mission. The flagship Dread Sovereign, a behemoth of metal and weaponry, would lead the charge, flanked by dozens of warships, cruisers, and destroyers, all outfitted with the latest Imperial technology. Their engines hummed with power as they awaited the Emperor's will. Among the fleet's commanders, Admiral Vespera stood at the forefront of the operation. Her reputation for efficiency and ruthlessness had earned her a place at the top of the imperial hierarchy. She was a veteran of many battles and had seen countless worlds bow to the Empire's might, but even she could not ignore the unease that gnawed at her stomach. As the fleet readied for departure, the message from Earth echoed in her mind. The gates are closing forever. What could it mean? How could a planet so small, so insignificant, have the audacity to make such a statement? Admiral, one of her officers spoke up, pulling her from her thoughts. Scans of the surrounding sectors show no unusual activity, no fleets, no major military assets on Earth's side of the system. However, we are detecting strange energy readings near the planet. Something unusual is happening. The officer's voice trailed off as he struggled to put the data into words. Vespera narrowed her eyes as she glanced at the screen before her. The image of Earth, floating in the blackness of space, seemed almost serene, a quiet planet untouched by the chaos of the galaxy's endless wars. But beneath its surface, something was stirring. The readings indicated that Earth was no longer the quiet world it had once been. Something had changed, something powerful had been awakened. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. Vespera ordered, her voice steady, but there was an edge of urgency in her tone. We will find out what Earth is hiding, and we will deal with it accordingly. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to the Emperor. Inform him we are en route. As the fleet surged forward through the cold expanse of space, heading for Earth at maximum speed, Vespera couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the Empire was making a grave mistake by underestimating this seemingly insignificant planet. She had seen the rise and fall of civilizations countless times, but Earth felt different. There was something about it that defied every expectation, and deep down, Vespera knew that this mission would be like no other. The outcome would change everything for the Empire, or it would be their undoing. The Imperial fleet entered the outer reaches of Earth's solar system, its warships cutting through the void with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The fleet's engines burned with purpose, their massive forms casting shadows against the cold backdrop of space. Admiral Vespera stood at the bridge of the Dread Sovereign, her sharp eyes scanning the tactical displays as the distant blue orb of Earth came into view. It was a sight she had seen many times in her career, but now it was different. Earth, once an insignificant speck among a galaxy full of more important worlds, had become the center of her attention. The tension in the air was palpable, every crew member on edge as they neared their destination. Status report, Vespera ordered, her voice unwavering. Her officers quickly complied, their hands moving across the controls with practiced precision. Admiral, said the communications officer, his voice tense, we are picking up strange energy fluctuations surrounding Earth. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. The readings are erratic, and they seem to be intensifying the closer we get. Vespera's brow furrowed. She had expected some form of resistance, but nothing like this. Earth had always been an afterthought in the Empire's expansion, a forgotten world at the fringe of its interests. To suddenly find such anomalies surrounding it was unexpected. She glanced at the view screen, watching Earth grow larger as the fleet approached. It seemed peaceful at first glance, a serene blue and green ball of life. But beneath its calm surface, something was shifting. "Divert all ships to combat readiness," Vespera commanded. "Prepare for anything." The fleet advanced further, and as they crossed the outer orbit of Mars, the anomalies grew stronger. Suddenly, the entire fleet was rocked by an unseen force, a pulse of energy so powerful it sent shockwaves through their hulls, destabilizing their sensors and scrambling their communications. "What in the galaxy was that?" one of her officers shouted, as alarms blared across the bridge. The force of the pulse dissipated as quickly as it had come, but it was enough to throw the fleet into disarray. Ships wavered in their trajectories, and crews scrambled to maintain control. The Imperial ships were powerful, but they had never encountered anything like this before. Vespera clenched her fists, a mixture of frustration and disbelief boiling inside her. "Get us back on course," she ordered. "Now." Her tactical officer quickly worked to stabilize the fleet, and the ships began to regroup. But Earth's defensive measures were already making their presence known. The next wave of energy came faster, harder, and more focused. It felt like a heavy pressure against the fleet, an invisible wall pushing back against their advance. A nearby cruiser, the Wrath of Thoth, shuddered violently before its outer hull began to crack, a deep rumble reverberating through the ship. "Admiral, the Wrath is taking heavy damage," a bridge officer called out. "Their shields are failing. They're asking for immediate assistance." Vespera's gaze hardened. She had no time to waste on a single ship. They were facing something far more dangerous than a rogue band of pirates or a primitive rebellion. Earth's defenses were organized and sophisticated, too sophisticated for a planet once thought of as a backwater. The Empire's intelligence had missed something crucial. "Redirect our firepower," Vespera commanded. "Target the source of these energy pulses. We need to break through before more ships are damaged." The fleet's guns fired in synchronized bursts, each blast cutting through the darkness of space toward Earth. But each shot seemed to vanish into the void, absorbed by an unseen force. Vespera's eyes narrowed as she watched the pulse patterns on her screens. It was as if Earth had surrounded itself with a shield not just of energy, but of distortion itself, a bending of space and time, warping the very fabric of reality to protect the planet. "Prepare to engage in close combat," Vespera said, the words slipping from her lips before she could even fully process them. If long-range attacks weren't working, they would have to go in closer. The decision wasn't easy. Space battles were rarely won up close, but Earth's defenses were too advanced to be overcome at a distance. As the fleet moved closer, the true extent of Earth's power began to show. The energy pulses intensified, and the fleet's weapon systems began to glitch. Blasts from their turrets fizzled out midair. The lights on the Dread Sovereign flickered. The feeling of something ancient, something not from this galaxy, was creeping into their systems, as if the planet itself was fighting back against the invasion. And then the fleet commander made a chilling discovery. Earth was no longer just a world. It was a fortress. Its pulse was a weapon. It wasn't just fighting to defend. It was shifting the very space around them into a battleground they didn't understand. The war had just taken a terrifying turn. The Dread Sovereign was now at the heart of the chaos, its massive hull trembling under the relentless barrage of energy pulses emanating from Earth. Admiral Vespera stood at the bridge, her hands clenched into fists, her sharp eyes glued to the holographic display. The planet below them, once a world of little interest to the Empire, now appeared more like a colossal, impenetrable fortress. Its defenses were not just sophisticated. They were ancient. The energy pulses weren't random. They were coordinated, calculated, and devastating. It felt as though Earth was not just defending itself, but actively rewriting the rules of space itself. "We need to adapt," Vespera muttered under her breath, her mind racing. "We're facing something that doesn't fit any of our strategies. This isn't just military technology. This is something more." Her chief engineer, Commander Talon, spoke up, his voice tense. "Admiral, our long-range weapons are useless. We've tried every frequency and targeting system we have, and nothing penetrates. It's as if Earth is alive in some way. The planet is shifting its defenses in real time, adapting faster than we can respond. Vespera clenched her jaw. So we're fighting against a living entity. Not quite, but it feels like it. Yes, Talon replied. We've detected subspace anomalies that we can't explain. There's something beneath Earth's surface, something large and ancient that's generating these pulses. It's almost as if the planet itself has been waiting for us, or something else. Vespera's mind spun. Ancient technology. Beneath the surface, she had read about the Earth's myths, tales of long-lost civilizations, strange artifacts, and unexplained phenomena. But she had never taken them seriously. The Empire had long dismissed Earth as a backward, undeveloped world. What they hadn't known was that Earth had been preparing, quietly and secretly, for a moment like this, a moment when the galaxy would try to reclaim it. Launch a reconnaissance team, Vespera ordered. We need boots on the ground. If we can't fight it from orbit, we'll need to understand what's hidden beneath that planet, and find a way to stop it. The fleet commander hesitated, but Vespera's glare was enough to push him into action. Within moments, a stealth shuttle was dispatched from the Dread Sovereign. Its engines silent as it descended toward Earth's surface, cloaked from the planet's increasingly powerful defenses. As it pierced through the atmosphere, a strange sense of urgency filled the shuttle's crew. What they were about to uncover could either be their salvation or their doom. As the shuttle broke through the clouds and descended into Earth's vast forests, it quickly made its way toward a remote location, far from the prying eyes of Earth's cities. It was here, deep within a series of hidden mountains, that they found what they were looking for. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a large, craggy rock formation, but as the shuttle scanners probed deeper into the mountain, they uncovered an entrance, a massive sealed door hidden beneath layers of stone and earth. The door was adorned with ancient symbols and markings that no one on the shuttle recognized. It was clear now. Earth had been hiding something for a very long time. Get a team down there, the shuttle's pilot said urgently. We need to know what's behind that door. The soldiers disembarked swiftly, using advanced technology to cut through the thick stone. Within moments, they had breached the entrance. What they discovered inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. The chamber stretched for miles, lined with enormous metallic structures and glowing energy conduits that hummed with power. At the center of the chamber was a colossal dormant machine, its design unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. It was as if the machine itself had been waiting for this moment. The soldiers felt a deep, unsettling presence in the air, a force that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the planet's heartbeat. This is it, one of the soldiers whispered, awestruck. This is what's been fueling the planet's defenses. But before they could proceed further, a sudden pulse of energy surged through the chamber, knocking them to the ground. The ancient machine before them flickered to life, its lights flashing in rapid succession as if it was awakening from a long slumber. The soldiers scrambled to their feet, realizing too late that they had triggered something far more powerful than they had ever anticipated. Admiral, one of the soldiers shouted into their communication device. You need to see this. We've uncovered something, an ancient machine, a weapon, and it's waking up. The transmission cut off abruptly. The line filled with static, leaving Vespera to wonder just how much the Empire had miscalculated. Earth had never been just a simple world. It had been a sleeper, an ancient power lying dormant, waiting for the day when the Empire's reach would finally stretch too far. And now, that day had come. Earth wasn't just defending itself. It was becoming something more. The planet had begun to awaken, and with it, the Empire's greatest fear was coming to life. Back on the Dread Sovereign, Admiral Vespera stood in silence, her mind racing. The message from Earth's surface had been brief but chilling. An ancient weapon, dormant for millennia, had just activated. And yet, something was worse than that. The pulse from the machine, the energy flooding through the chamber, was not just destructive. It was a message, a signal that resonated with the very fabric of space, as if the planet itself was speaking. Then came the message Earth had been waiting to send, a transmission breaking through the static, its clarity cutting through the silence like a blade. It was broadcast not only to Vespera's fleet, but across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, Earth's voice was no longer a whisper in the void. It was a declaration. The image flickered into view, and a human figure appeared, tall and imposing, yet calm and composed. The figure stood against a backdrop of what appeared to be a vast, ancient control room, filled with strange machinery and glowing symbols, exactly what the reconnaissance team had just uncovered. But what struck Vespera most was the message itself. It wasn't just a communication, it was a challenge. People of the Empire, the human figure began, their voice steady and clear. We are the descendants of the original architects of this galaxy. We are humanity. You have long forgotten us, dismissed us, and thought us weak, small, and insignificant. But you have underestimated us. You have miscalculated. The words echoed across the fleet, each one sharper than the last, carrying the weight of centuries of silence. We are not your subjects, nor will we ever be again. Earth has awakened. Our gates are closing. Forever. Vespera's stomach tightened. The voice was cold, determined, yet something more resonated beneath it, something powerful. It was not the voice of a desperate people. It was the voice of someone who knew their strength, who understood the consequences of defying the Empire. This is not a threat. The voice continued, unwavering. This is a promise. You will not invade us. You will not rule us. Earth stands sovereign. The galaxy has been ruled by your empire for too long, but it ends here. You cannot control what you do not understand. We are more than just a planet. We are more than you could ever fathom. And now, the gates are closing. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vespera and the fleet's commanders in stunned silence. The enormity of the message began to sink in. Earth had not only turned its back on the Empire, it had reclaimed something ancient, something powerful, and in doing so, had erased the Empire's hold over it. The silence on the bridge was broken by one of Vespera's officers. Admiral, the energy readings, there's more. Earth's power is continuing to grow. Whatever ancient systems they've activated, they're harnessing them. It's not just a defense mechanism anymore. It's becoming a weapon. Vespera's eyes hardened. Earth was no longer a passive entity. It was fighting back, not with primitive tools, but with technology and knowledge the Empire had never encountered. The image of the human figure, the calm authority in their eyes, lingered in her mind. There was something unsettling about how prepared they were, as if this moment had been anticipated for centuries. What's worse, Vespera muttered to herself, is that they're not just fighting for their survival. They're fighting for something much larger. Her voice was grim as she turned to her fleet officers. Increase shields and prepare for further engagement. If Earth is closing its gates, then we are running out of time to act. But Admiral, one of her officers protested, they've already shown that we can't penetrate their defenses. The energy pulses are not just weaponry. They're bending space-time itself. We can't fight that. Vespera's jaw tightened. She had spent years commanding the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and she had never encountered anything like this. She was used to seeing enemies buckle under the might of the Empire, to watch entire civilizations crumble beneath their boots. But Earth was not buckling. Earth was standing tall. And in doing so, it had exposed a deep weakness within the Empire itself, a vulnerability the Empire had never expected. I know, she said, her voice tinged with something darker than frustration. But we have to try. We cannot allow Earth to remain defiant. This is just the beginning. The galaxy will be watching, and if Earth succeeds in closing its gates, other worlds will follow. The Empire's reign could end here. Her words hung in the air, thick with foreboding. But inside, Vespera knew something else, something that gnawed at her. Earth had done something that no one, not even the Emperor himself, had expected. The gates were closing, but something about the closing felt like the beginning of an entirely new war, one that would echo across the stars. And Earth, the planet that had once been dismissed as insignificant, was no longer a part of that galaxy-wide empire. Earth was now the greatest fear of the Galactic Empire. The Imperial fleet hovered just outside Earth's orbit, its massive warships still struggling to overcome the planet's powerful, enigmatic defenses. Admiral Vespera stood in the heart of the command center aboard the Dread Sovereign, her gaze fixed on the swirling energy patterns around Earth. The fleet had sustained significant damage. Shields had buckled under the strain of Earth's relentless energy pulses, and several ships had already been forced to retreat, crippled by the power of the planet's mysterious technologies. Yet, despite the losses, the Admiral knew that there was no turning back now. "We cannot back down," Vespera said, her voice firm, a reflection of the determination that had kept her at the top of the Empire's ranks. "Prepare for a full-scale assault. Whatever Earth is using to fight us, we will break it." Her orders were clear, and the fleet's commanders moved with purpose. The Dread Sovereign began aligning itself to launch another barrage of firepower. Their weapons would have to hit harder and faster this time, overwhelming Earth's defenses before the planet could adjust. Yet, in the back of Vespera's mind, doubt lingered. The energy fields around Earth had proven adaptive, evolving with each strike. What had once seemed like a defense mechanism now appeared to be a weapon capable of distorting space itself. "Admiral, the energy pulses are growing stronger," her communications officer reported. "They're shifting in frequency and intensity. It's almost as though they're anticipating our every move." Vespera's eyes narrowed. "They're learning, adapting. We need to find their weakness." As the fleet readied itself for the assault, Admiral Vespera's thoughts kept returning to the human figure that had broadcast Earth's message. The calm, unwavering confidence in the voice of their leader unsettled her. Whoever they were, they knew something about Earth's power that the Empire had never even considered. What could Earth possibly have hidden beneath its surface that could allow it to stand against the might of the Empire? The answer had to be the ancient machine that had recently been awakened, the one responsible for the strange energy fields that surrounded Earth. But the more Vespera thought about it, the more she realized that brute force might not be the solution. If Earth's defenses were truly tied to something that ancient and powerful, then their systems might be too intricately woven into the fabric of the planet to simply dismantle them with conventional weapons. She turned toward her fleet's tactical officer. "Send a team to infiltrate Earth's atmosphere," she ordered. "We need to get a closer look at whatever is powering these defenses." The officer nodded. "We'll prepare the stealth dropships immediately, Admiral." Vespera glanced back at the view screen, where Earth loomed like a silent sentinel, its defenses rippling like waves of energy across space. The stakes had never been higher. The Empire's power, its centuries of dominance, were now on the line, threatened by a single planet, a planet that had refused to remain in the Empire's grasp. The thought of Earth's autonomy, of humanity's defiance, made her blood run cold. The Empire had never tolerated such insubordination, and it never would. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," Vespera commanded, her voice rising above the tension on the bridge. "We will strike every power relay, every node we can identify. We will overwhelm them with firepower. We will not lose another ship to this madness." The fleet shifted into formation, and the massive guns aboard the Dread Sovereign powered up. This time, there would be no hesitation, no mercy. But as the first wave of energy was launched, something unexpected happened. The energy pulses from Earth did not just block the shots, they'd redirected them. The powerful blasts of the Empire's weapons were bent and twisted, aimed not at Earth's defenses, but back at the Imperial fleet itself. It was as though Earth's machinery had turned the Empire's own might against it. "Report," Vespera shouted as the fleet shook from the redirected fire. The tactical officer's voice cracked. "Admiral, we've lost several ships. The energy it's bending the very laws of physics. Our weapons are useless. This isn't just a defense mechanism. This is an offensive weapon. Vespera's mind raced. The Empire had faced rebellions, pirates, and invaders, but never anything like this. Earth wasn't simply defending itself. It was waging war on the Empire in ways they couldn't even understand. Its ancient systems were rewriting the rules of engagement, neutralizing the Empire's advanced weaponry, and turning it against them. "We're not fighting a planet anymore," Vespera muttered, her expression grim. "We're fighting an entity that's evolved over millennia. It has anticipated every move we make." One of her officers, his voice trembling, broke in. "Admiral, if Earth can do this, if it can continue to adapt like this, we can't win. We've already lost too many ships. We might not have the resources to hold out much longer." Vespera took a slow breath, steeling herself. The Empire's greatest asset, the sheer force of its might, was crumbling under the weight of an unknown power. She knew, deep down, that the only way to win now was not through brute force, but through understanding Earth's power. "We need to know what Earth is hiding," Vespera said, her voice colder than ever. "We need that data, and we need it now. Prepare the team for immediate infiltration." Earth's gates were closing, and the Empire's time was running out. A glowing heart of energy that seemed to pulse with life. The walls were lined with unfamiliar devices, some of which seemed to defy all understanding of Imperial science. Everything about the place screamed ancient, yet its power felt more advanced than anything the Empire had at its disposal. This is impossible," one of the soldiers whispered as he took in the sight. The squad leader motioned for them to advance, his voice low but urgent. "We need to learn everything we can. Whatever this is, it's the source of Earth's defenses. We need to disable it, or we're all going to die here." As the soldiers moved forward, a sudden flash of light filled the chamber, and a voice echoed through the walls, booming and deep. The words were not in any language the soldiers had ever heard, but somehow they understood. "Earth is awakening." The voice intoned, its tone ancient and powerful. "The time of the Empire is over. The gates are closed. Humanity's guardians rise." The soldiers froze, looking at each other in confusion and fear. Something was watching them. Something far more powerful than they could have ever imagined. Then, from the darkness of the chamber, the first of the machines began to stir. The soldiers instinctively raised their weapons, but it was too late. The core at the center of the room flared with blinding light, and the entire chamber trembled. A massive metallic figure rose from the shadows, a sentinel, its shape towering and almost alien, yet distinctly human in its construction. It was a guardian of unimaginable power, and it was coming to life. "This isn't just a machine," one of the soldiers muttered in awe. It's a weapon of Earth." The guardian stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. It was a remnant of humanity's ancient past, an artifact created for a purpose no one on the Empire's side could yet comprehend. The soldiers opened fire, but their weapons had no effect. The machine's energy field absorbed their shots, as though they were nothing more than raindrops. It moved faster than they could react, and in a split second, it was upon them. Admiral Vespera watched in horror as the feedback from the reconnaissance team's transmission cut off. The signal was lost, and all she could see was static. "Report," she barked, but the silence that followed was deafening. On the surface of Earth, the battle for the planet had just begun, and the Empire was no longer in control. The gates had closed, and humanity's ancient power had been unleashed. The loss of the reconnaissance team hit Admiral Vespera like a blow to the gut. She stood on the command deck of the Dread Sovereign, her hands gripping the rail in front of her, her mind racing. The loss of contact with the surface team was one thing, inevitable in the chaos. But the strange silence that followed, the disappearance of their signal, was a terrifying confirmation that Earth's power was beyond anything the Empire had anticipated. "Admiral," the communications officer said, his voice tight with unease, "we're receiving something. It's not a transmission, but a pulse. Vespera's heart skipped. Earth had been sending strange energy pulses, but this was different. It wasn't just blocking their weapons or distorting their sensors. This pulse was more like a command, a directive that seemed to resonate through space itself, a pulse that was sent not just to the fleet, but across the galaxy. The officer continued, his eyes wide. It's coming from Earth itself. The frequency is unlike anything we've encountered. Play it, Vespera ordered. The silence on the bridge deepened as the pulse filled the room. It wasn't a sound, but a deep rhythmic hum, a vibration that seemed to tug at the fabric of reality itself. And then, a voice echoed through the pulse, the same voice from earlier, the one that had challenged the Empire. But this time, it was different. It was not just a declaration, it was a command. Empire of the Stars. The voice boomed, its resonance vibrating through every crew member's bones. Your reign is at an end. The gates are closing. You will not return. Your time in the galaxy is over. Vespera's grip tightened on the rail, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. The gates were closing, the pulse repeating. It was a signal, but more than that, it was a final warning. Earth had not only defended itself, it had turned the very foundation of the galaxy's power on its head. The force they were dealing with wasn't just technological. It was something older, something that predated even the Empire. Admiral, the fleet is losing cohesion. The tactical officer shouted. We're being pulled off course. Our navigation systems are failing. The energy pulses are distorting space-time. Before he could finish, the bridge lurched violently. The entire ship was rocked by a tremendous force, and Vespera had to steady herself against the console. The starboard side of the Dread Sovereign shuddered as if an invisible hand had grabbed it and was shaking it. Shields at maximum. Vespera barked, trying to regain control. Power to the engines. Get us out of this gravitational anomaly. But it was no use. The energy pulse from Earth wasn't just knocking them off course. It was pulling them in, bending the very space around them. It felt as though they were caught in the grip of something that defied all natural laws. The fleet's movements were sluggish, as though they were wading through thick fog. We're locked in place. Admiral, the officer reported, his voice filled with panic. We can't escape. Earth's defenses air. The warning was cut short as the space around them twisted once again, a final powerful wave of distortion from Earth sending the Imperial fleet into chaos. Ships groaned and buckled under the stress of the space-time warping. Vespera watched helplessly as one of the Imperial ships, a massive destroyer, began to collapse in on itself, its hull crumpling like paper as it was torn apart by the force. Crew members screamed as the walls of the ship bent inward, crushed by an unseen power. And then, in the midst of the destruction, the pulse from Earth ceased. The bridge was silent. The Empire's fleet hung in space, immobilized, caught in the grip of Earth's ancient power. Vespera looked at the viewscreen, where the planet hung silently in the dark void, its surface glowing with the faint light of a planet at peace, yet underlaid by something far more ominous. It was no longer just a world on the fringe of the galaxy. It was an entity unto itself, a force that had broken free of the Empire's grasp. Admiral, one of her officers spoke in a strained voice. The remaining ships, they're retreating. We can't continue the fight. We've lost. Vespera stood motionless, staring at the wreckage around her. The fleet was in ruins. Earth had won. And it was no longer the isolated, forgotten world the Empire had once dismissed. It had closed its gates, not just to the Empire, but to the entire galaxy. The voice returned. This time, not a broadcast, but a simple command delivered through the vast reaches of space. Humanity is free. Vespera knew in that moment that the galaxy had changed. The Empire's greatest fear had come true. Earth had shut its gates, and with it, the future of the galaxy had taken a new path, one where the Empire would no longer dictate the stars. Earth had risen, and the Empire's reign had ended.